Welcome to the Propreneur Podcast, where we help practice owners become better entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Dino Watt. All right, welcome everybody once again to the Propreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dino Watt. Excited to have you here again, and thank you for being here, listening in, subscribing to our channel, and using us as your rolling university while most of you are either in your car listening, on the treadmill, out in the park, taking a run, however you're doing this, even if you're in the bathroom. We want to make sure that we are giving you the best possible content available. And today we're going to deliver on that promise through having our expert on the podcast, our guest, Mr. Neil Zemba. Neil, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Dino. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, Neil is a digital marketing guru. Do you call yourself a guru, or am I just throwing that in there?
You know, I'm open to it. I'm open to it.
That's good.
Sure, I'll take it.
Should be. Well, you know, I think it's one of the really important evolutions that's happened in the private practice over the last 10 to 15 years is understanding the power and the necessity really of digital marketing in your practice. And that's why we're excited to have you on. I know our listeners are going to get a ton of great information from you just through your story, through your expertise, and hopefully through some little tips and tricks that we can send out to them through the airways. But before we get to all of that, as we always do on the show, I would love for you to give us a quick little introduction to who you are, where you came from, and why do you do what you do?
Sure. And again, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. A quick version of my background, I guess. I'm from a small town in Michigan called Saline, Michigan, right by Ann Arbor. I grew up in the country. Went to university at University of Michigan. Go Blue. I still can't believe we beat Notre Dame last week. I'm still in shock from that.
That's literally news to me. I have no idea about that stuff.
I got out of football for a little bit because of how we were doing, and now I'm entertaining getting back into football, but we'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out.
Nice.
So I went to University of Michigan. I studied industrial design and business there. I thought I was going to be an architect. Then I switched and I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I just realized, I really am pretty passionate about business. I had been pretty entrepreneurial from a young age. My dad owned a sub shop and a coffee shop in downtown Ann Arbor. And put me to work at a relatively young age. My joke is I was violating child labor laws since I was 9, serving coffee, making sandwiches, these kinds of things. Rock on, high five.
Yep.
And but it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about. I'm very glad that he did that. It taught me a lot about life and just the value of a dollar, the value of helping people, which is what I think really good business is all about. And food service, is a grueling industry, but it's a great thing to do, I think, as a kid. So long story short, Ann Arbor and that kind of area in Michigan is a big part of my, upbringing. And so it's funny, in college, I had a lot of friends that went to dental school. I ended up graduating, again, studying, business and then also in industrial design. While I was in school, I started a tech company with one of my friends. It was like a tech startup. It was kind of what's now become sort of proverbial. We built an app. It wasn't in our dorm room, but it was in our apartment at the time. And, so we built this app. It was called Serve, S-E-R-V, because we were being techie and we wanted to spell things differently. And so we built this app.
Rule number one.
Exactly. You have to spell it incorrectly or else it's not a real tech company. At least that's what we thought at the time. And basically what it was an app to deliver food and drinks to people at their seats in stadiums. That's kind of was the general gist of it, and we wanted to basically increase the fan experience at stadiums. So that there was an app. What's funny about that is we thought that we were creating a consumer app, and it turns out that we were really building like a logistics company, because to actually deliver on the promise of providing that service to people, you have to have this massive infrastructure. So we basically ended up becoming more of an enterprise software company. And yeah, but that's startup life, isn't it? So I did that for about 4 years. After that point, we ended up selling some licenses to the business. We exited the company, we sold the company, and I ended up working with a couple other startups and larger organizations alike. I was at Comerica in Auburn Hills here in Michigan for a little while, which is probably the largest organization that I worked with. But it's funny because what I was basically doing was when we created our tech company, we realized that we needed to get downloads. We needed to market this company. And I realized pretty quickly as well, just through some of like the marketing vendors that we were working with, the marketing companies, that it was really something that I wanted to get better at, because I just got the sense that there was just a lot of money going out and I just couldn't really tell where it was going and what it was being used for, kind of a thing. And so about 5 years ago, I don't know if I mentioned this, but a lot of my friends and family are either doctors or somehow involved in the medical industry. I was kind of going in my head of being a doctor. Dentistry, it's funny because dentistry has always played a big part of my life, especially being interested in business. I always found dentistry very fascinating because it was kind of that last bastion to me of, especially at the time, I mean, 10 years ago, the DSO conversation wasn't really happening.
Sure. Yeah.
Now. And I just always thought it was interesting, like business and medicine, to me, there's a strong dental thing there because it's kind of like, okay, you can be a doctor and it's kind of the norm to eventually go into private practice with that field, that field path is working in a hospital or something like that.
Yep.
And then, but even being at U of M, which I think has a great business program, a lot of my friends that eventually became dentists had zero business training whatsoever.
100%. Yeah.
And that's the thing that I noticed. And I was talking to your colleague Amy about this, last week previously, and that was something that we started to talk about a lot because it's just very palpable. I mean, it's very noticeable.
Totally.
So
yeah, you add that to the fact that most of them are not born entrepreneurs, and you've got a recipe for some real hard times.
Yeah, definitely. And that was a big thing that I remember noticing early on. And so about 5 years ago, after we sold one of our businesses, I kind of took a break and I just was trying to find my next thing, the thing that I want to do. I ended up partnering up with a family friend. He's been in dentistry for, I want to say, about 35 years now. And at the time, he had 2 offices. I kind of came in as sort of the entrepreneur in residence. And what I wanted to know is essentially, I just said, what are your biggest problems? That's one of the things that I really legitimately love about business is that you can actually solve either simple or very complex problems that end up helping people and providing value. And I really believe that sort of on even like a spiritual level. That's that's why I do what I do.
Totally.
And he goes, look, if he's like, I've been doing this for a long time. He's very organized. He's very funny. He has all these lists of companies that he worked with over the years of consultants and this and that. He has some pretty strong opinions about what consultants do in the dental world and what marketing, folks do. And he said, if you can figure out marketing, that's what you should do. Because I still don't, at the time, he didn't have any vendor that he was working with, and there was a reason for that. And so what I basically ended up doing is for the next about 12 months, I just was working on finding the right vendor, because that's what I thought was going to be the solution. I was like, let's bring somebody in and work with them. At the time, I had already been, working with Google Ads for probably about 10 years, Facebook ads since they came out, because I was running ads for our own businesses. So I was very familiar with those platforms. And the other thing too is, and I think even now especially, a lot of times I get kind of pegged as the digital guy, when in reality, I'm like, look, I just want to do what works. I like data. I'm very big into you can't manage what you can't measure. Those are my philosophies, and I've seen them play out. I like to just measure everything. My joke is like, if marketing via Rhino next year is like what makes patients come in, like I will get into the rhino breeding business. Like it doesn't matter what it is. It's just right now, what's going on with phones and Google and Facebook. That's it. Those are the best ad buys for your money across the board. Depending on the market, depending on where the office is things like that. I still see a lot of success with mailers. I still see a lot of success with some traditional media. But I will tell you that the more that you can apply, for example, Google data to these things, the better results that you're going to get, and you see that across the board.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's one of those things where you have to go to where the people are, and the people are in those markets, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and it's fascinating to me. Look, if you have one of these and it's working for you, awesome. I bet it's not working as well as it could be, but I still kind of look at people who are using billboards and just going, wow, you must have money to burn. Like you must use money to keep you warm in the winter, because that's a lot of dough not getting a huge, I don't know about you. I don't know the last time I saw a billboard. And even if I liked what they're, oh, that's neat, that I had time while I was driving by to get out a pen and paper and write down, even taking a phone up, and taking a picture of it. That's dangerous. Like, it's very interesting, but it's also not surprising, because this, as you said, is not something people are taught in school. They're rinsing, repeating what they've heard before, what the guy before them that they bought the practice from, this is what he did, so they're just going to keep doing it.
Right.
And they are surprised when it's not working. And I'm sure you've seen, over this last 10 years especially, the evolution of the practice, the evolution of the practice marketing of what's has to happen. And that's some really good insight that you have about go where the people are.
100%. Go where
and the numbers will tell you, right? Like that's the cool thing about the numbers. The numbers are the numbers. It's there's a gentleman out there who talks, he's a political guy, but he talks about, the facts don't care about your feelings. Well, numbers don't care about your feelings either. The numbers are there or they're not. Yeah. What's the ROI?
100%.
Yeah.
You're telling me that when you go by a billboard, you don't Google the name of the practice and then call them in your car? You don't do that?
I haven't yet. No, I'm sure I will someday. I mean, who knows?
It's funny because I was actually having this conversation with a client earlier today, and we were talking about, because one of my biggest things, even just because I'm very big into business models, and whenever I look at a vendor, whether it's for our own offices or whether it's for a client's offices, any vendor that is treating what they do as a commodity is, to me, the biggest red flag to run in the opposite direction. And a perfect example of that is a lot of traditional media. So a lot of these billboards, it's really funny because I was going, I said, we were talking about cameras on billboards. I'm like, if they just put a camera on the bottom of a billboard that looked at the road and then tracked the number of cars that came by and then the kinds of cars that came by to basically look at household income. In other words, if you saw a certain brand of cars and these kinds of things, they have cameras on billboards, but they point up at the creative on the billboard, so they can show the client, "Hey, we're doing stuff. We made your stuff. Yeah, look, we made your billboard for you." Take the camera, point it down, and get those analytics, but they don't care, because if you don't buy the billboard, they don't care. Bob's Bakery is going to buy it, or the Cadillac is going to buy it, or whatever. And the same thing with TV. If you don't buy their TV spot, they couldn't care less. Same thing with radio. The thing that I think actually does work with traditional media in some markets are mailers. If the creative is done correctly, if you're paying the right price for the mailer, and if you're leveraging the right data, if you're using a new homeowners list, if you are focusing on, high income households, especially if you're cash only office or only accept PPO, essentially if you're not a Medicaid office, mailers potentially could be good. The only thing that I always say about it is, you just have to be so careful. I mean, it's all about tracking. You have to put in a system to be able to track that. I like to put tracking phone numbers on everything.
Yep.
I realize that not a lot of people behaviorally are going to call a mailer, but what a lot of people will do, if the right offer is on the mailer and you say you have to bring this in like a coupon, that's a good way of measuring that.
Yep.
And if you don't do that, I definitely don't recommend it.
And I also think my thing is always the mailer needs to be stand out in its educational purposes, so it doesn't look like it's just a sale or the cheap, hey, you're only getting the coupon, because you don't want that client, right? You want the guy who wants to be educated what you do, but showing them that you're the expert in that space. Everything can be measured, and that's why I have doctors all the time when I'll say, well, if you're going to do that, at least have some sort of tracker on it. Well, how am I supposed to know? Like, you can't measure that. I'm like, yeah, you can. Whether it be a code word, a special phone number, something to get it out there. I want to clarify, though, I think it's important for people who are listening to this, private practice owners, that when you say digital marketing, I know a lot of people jump straight to, well, Facebook ads, or yeah, I'm on Instagram. What does digital marketing, clarify what digital marketing is to you and how they should be looking at what digital marketing is for their business?
So I think that's an amazing question, first of all, because to me, digital marketing is any marketing where you're leveraging the internet or any apps that live on the internet. That's how I would define it. Now, the biggest thing for us, and the topic that I'm probably most passionate about with respect to all of this, dental marketing stuff in general, is a lot of digital marketers are not doing digital marketing correctly. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of ways to define correctly, but they're not measuring the right things. And I'm talking about them. I'm talking about people that do it professionally, and I don't name any names or anything like that, but I will tell you, so, kind of going back to how, I got into this, my partners got into this, when we were looking at vendors for our own practice, and my partner previously, to me, had used all the big names that you could think of, right? All the big box sort of agencies, this kind of thing, smaller, more individual, people or contractors that were experts with digital marketing, which is, by the way, what I would recommend to practice owners to do, is try and find somebody more local like that, that's very good at running Google ads, running Facebook ads. Those are the big two. Anybody talking about Snapchat or TikTok, I had somebody talking about doing TikTok, or anybody that's asking you to twerk on camera or anything like this, I don't agree with that necessarily.
Well, I'd like to see that, though. I'd like to see it.
I'd like to see it too. You show me the data on twerking, I'm there. I'm with you. But for now, we measure everything that we do. And I don't even think I said this yet, but so I'm a partner now in a company called Unique Dental Marketing. That was kind of the business that spun out from this. So in addition, we basically created this to market our own offices. So our DSO is called Executive Dental Group. We're based out of Michigan. We're about to close out our 5th office right now. And so, I call us a homegrown DSO. But what I'll tell you is that, we're very adamant about just measuring like everything that we're doing. And so the thing that we find just makes the most production dollars and brings in the most new patients consistently are just really well done Google ads. Facebook is creeping up. It's becoming more and more profitable. It depends on how you do it. This leads into another topic that I'm really passionate about what your front desk staff is doing to capture these leads and bring people in. So my whole manifesto, my whole belief right now is that there's really no such thing as just dental marketing. Like when you talk about dental marketing, you're really talking about the top end of your case acceptance funnel. And if there's leaks in your funnel, if there are problems with your funnel, I know that you're really passionate about team dynamics. To me, a huge part of that has to do with everybody understanding how to ethically sell.
Yes.
Every time I use the word sell, I understand in the medical world, it can be taboo, right? It can be a dirty word to say sales. And I
gotta change it.
I agree with that. I think that if more doctors adopted, and it doesn't even matter what the lingo or the jargon is, in my view, but whatever you call it, I mean, the doctor's going to go in, the doctor is going to diagnose the patient anyways. So right there you've got the separation of church and state, right? You're not selling anybody anything that they don't need. And I think that that's oftentimes the stigma, which I get completely. A lot of my friends are doctors. A lot of my friends still don't like it. But then once they understand, okay, we're not talking about sales necessarily. You're talking about patient experience, and you're talking about providing the right kind of service to somebody that benefits everybody. I mean, how many times has a doctor seen where somebody comes in, they need extensive work, they don't want to pay for it, they think it's a large bill. This ties into other issues that about maybe they don't have the right payment plans or financing in their office or whatever it is. But let's just say everything else is perfect. Let's say that they do have great payment plans. Let's say they do have great financing options. They need the right treatment, or else they're going to have even more work down the line, and they're going to suffer, and they're going to be in more pain and all this stuff. And I know you agree with all of this, but it's like, it's so true. So what does that have to do with dental marketing? It has to do with dental marketing because it's the same mentality. I see one of the biggest things that frustrated me when we were just vetting vendors and marketing companies is there's a lot of companies, I won't name names, that will basically say, hey, you're going to pay us $250 for a lead, and we're going to drop it off at your office, and then you can go have a nice life. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of problems with that, besides the obvious ones. But one is, I always think about it like a partnership. Like anybody that we work with, it's a partnership. First of all, they have to have the mentality to understand like what we're really trying to do here. I always ask doctors and operators what their goals are. If they want 10 new patients a month and they want them to just be implant patients or something like that, that's one strategy. And there's a whole different path for that. And they're going to spend, this, but they should allocate X budget to that and expect X ROI. Right. If they want 100 patients a month and they want half hygiene and they love emergency cases, but they want a little cosmetic peppered in there so that Dr. Smith can have his thing and because he enjoys that. And I think it's really important too to ask those questions even when you're talking about marketing, because it comes down to lifestyle, really. At the end of the day, right? What do you want to do? How many hours a day do you want to work? What do you want your day to be like? It's all possible with marketing. What I think the problem is that happens is two main things. One, what I found was that I would say about 70 to 80% of the companies that we worked with were simply, you talk about KPIs, they were simply optimizing for the wrong thing. And the other thing too is that, and obviously this all goes back to what you're talking about with digital marketing. I think it's all related because everybody is so jaded about marketing right now in general, especially in the dental world. To me, there's a lot of reasons for that. I think that 80% of the companies that do this are completely measuring the wrong thing. They're measuring what they call conversions. A conversion in Google is a Google jargon term. That's really what anybody listening, I really want them to understand this. When your marketing company or anybody that runs your ads for you says, oh, look at how many conversions you're getting. You could call it turtles. You could call it whatever you want to call it. All that means is that they got a phone call, or they got a form fill, or they got some sort of action from the person. Right. So just to break this down at a high level for people listening, on the left-hand side, you've got impressions. Then you've got clicks. So an impression means that somebody saw your ad. When I say saw, they maybe scrolled through it and spent 0.2 milliseconds on it. Their device saw the ad, which is another important distinction. And then there's clicks. Now, impressions and clicks, I don't want to say that I don't show it to my clients, but I just really don't care if my clients see it or not. And I'm very vocal about this because they're vanity metrics. It's BS, right? A lot of companies, oh, look at how many impressions you got. You ever heard that?
All the time.
Look how many clicks you got, And it's funny, you go to all the big conferences and that's all they talk about is this and that. Like almost anything else in life, right? Marketing, it can work extremely well. I mean, we have clients that are doing 20x ROI. We have these, you want to talk about that? But what no one wants to talk about is, yes, there's a lot of operational things that have to happen and have to be in place that are very doable. I mean, I would use the word easy. I wouldn't say they're easy for every office. I think it depends on the office, but it's extremely achievable in pretty much every market. I mean, you want to talk about an urban market versus suburban versus rural. It's probably easiest in a rural market. It's probably hardest in a suburban market for other reasons that we can get into. But the point is that those vanity metrics don't mean a lot. So a lot of these companies are basically just optimizing for vanity metrics. So what ends up happening is, and tell me if this sounds familiar, is you have this standoff. The office is pissed at their marketing company because they're like, hey, you're not getting the phones to ring. And even if you're getting the phones to ring, you're not getting the phones to ring with the kinds of patients that I want, that we set that expectation that you were going to bring me. And then the marketing company is going to do one of two things, depending on how, I'll just say, adept they are. One, they're not going to know what they're optimizing for. And a lot of times you see this too, and companies that basically don't understand the business of dentistry are going to have a hard time optimizing for what you need as a dentist. Because they're not going to understand, they might understand what an implant case is worth to you, but they don't understand how to market that case necessarily. Right. On the flip side, you have companies that all they do is they say, I'm going to specialize in just implant dentistry. I think some of them are good. I think some of them are completely also throwing money down the drain because they're missing out on other kinds of patients that are a lot cheaper for that medium of Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever it is that they do. So that's my 2 cents. Yeah.
Well, gosh, you got so many things I want to unwrap because I love this. I love it because I believe that digital marketing at the very basis of it is actually the great equalizer in business, because you're able to do what the big corporations like the McDonald's and the Targets and stuff can do as well, but just in your local area. And with YouTube and Facebook and Google and all the cheaper advertising opportunities, you can be seen by a lot of people. Yeah. But as you said, so Amy, as you mentioned earlier, she's my vice president of sales and marketing. We often call it the predatory companies because we see that a lot in specializations, whether it be orthodontics or dentistry or implants, whatever, that these companies come in and say, hey, we can get in front of all of your ideal clientele by doing X, Y, and Z. And they utilize, as you said, the impressions, or I love the word, the vanity matrix, right? Hey, you were seen by 50,000 people this last month. Awesome. The next question every doctor, every practice owner should say is, how many dollars were actually produced inside my office because of those 50,000? Yep. Because I don't care if you have it on a Super Bowl commercial. Yep. That's not the point. The point is not just being seen, it's how much cash is coming in. So to your point of what's the funnel? And for those of you that don't understand what the funnel is, if you picture actually a funnel, the fattest part of that funnel at the very top, and how are we narrowing that down, the process down, so that it ends up in a sale. If your director of first impressions, the person that picks up the phone call, is terrible on the phone, if she doesn't know, I just got done talking with another person about this on the last podcast episode, about if she doesn't know how to speak and listen like a ninja and hear all the right things and be able to position yourself as the person, the go-to person, you're losing money right there. I often say this, I actually did a training just today to one of my clients about this, that there's only really 2 positions in any office, sales and sales support. The rest, everything else is a title. Oh, I'm an assistant. I'm a treatment coordinator. I'm a hygienist. That's cool. That's the title. But what you do is you're in sales or sales support. And just the last point that you said that I really love is sales is for whatever reason, it's a dirty word inside of most of these practices. They need to embrace it because the fact of the matter is sales and cash is the oxygen to any business. If you don't have it, you're going to suffocate and die.
And your practice is very much a business.
Practice is 100% a business. And it's so hard for many of these guys because we're not taught that way. I think you alluded to this at the very beginning, right? The natural evolution of a doctor. They go to school. They're really great. They get all good grades. They pass the boards, everything. They become an associate. They learn what they should and should not do, hopefully. And then they go and they say, well, I need to go buy a practice so I can have that golden parachute at the end of 20, 30 years. But it's that 20, 30 years that's going to make all the difference, because that's called being an entrepreneur.
Yes, that's doing the actual thing of
growing a business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And only 3% of us are actual entrepreneurs. So not a lot of them are.
Right. Right. And I always say too, if myself or my other main partner, Nick, were doctors, I think it would be harder. It's of course it can be done. I mean,
Yes.
my clients are phenomenal dentists and business people, but I'll tell you, I mean, to your point, it's a whole other world of training, of education, of self-education, of wanting to do it, of realizing what you're actually getting into,
Yep.
and of working with and trusting the right people that are giving you the right advice. I mean, that's another thing about being a business owner is everybody and your mother, literally. My mother is very vocal about my entrepreneurial endeavors.
My mom doesn't know what I do, so it's fine.
My mom doesn't know really what I do either, yet she's still very opinionated about it.
That's true.
And so, I love my mom. I just want to say that. But at the same time, you still have to really build that intuition and understand how to read a P&L and understand what KPIs matter versus what are literally just sales tactics by other companies. A lot of times too, another thing that I noticed with dentists is they take sales pitches very seriously. And it really worries me. I'm like, that's a sale. Like whenever they get an email and I get forwarded an email or something and I'm like, and they think it's this cool thing. And I'm like, that is a sales pitch.
Yes.
And I do actually, I think one of the good things, I guess, about doctors being so jaded about marketing companies in general is that
well,
that's
I love
really
what
how
you said about if you were a doctor, it would make it harder because I think that's what makes you so valuable. And I'm obviously speaking this from my place too, is that I'm not a doctor, I'm not an orthodontist, I'm not a private practice owner. I know business and I love business. And so I get to come in and see what you can't see. There's a great book called The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham.
Yep.
And he talks about how, we can't smell our own breath. And we need to think about that your value in what you do is not just in the fact that you understand the digital side of marketing, which is, I believe, the most important side of marketing in today's market, in today's world, but is that you also understand the business aspect of it so you can lead and guide and direct from a place of, I got no dog in this fight. I'm not competing against you. I just want to see you succeed.
Right. Right.
And that's crucial. So let me ask you this, man, you've said some great stuff. I can't believe how quickly time is going. What's the thing, if somebody's listening to this, whatever day of the week they're listening to it, they're driving home, they're hearing this, like, man, we got to crack down on digital marketing stuff. What's the one area that you think that they should really look into that they can make a difference within the next 48 hours? Like, what can they do to make a huge difference?
So I think there's a couple things. One is just really be mindful of who you're working with. Specifically, here's the biggest specific thing that I would do, and this might be a little more of a bit more of a deep dive, but the only way that you can actually measure, so going back to that conversions conversation, if a conversion doesn't matter, then what does? What matters is the number of actual quality patients that are calling in and actually booking. In order to know that, you have to record your calls.
Oh my gosh!
And you have to either listen to them yourself, or you have to find somebody to work with as your marketing partner or vendor that does that. Now, most marketing companies don't want to do that. I'll take it one step further, and I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but there are tools out there right now. There's one called Practice IQ. There's another one called CallSumo that will actually plug in your Google ads with your practice management system, and it will actually tell you how much in production all of your campaigns are making. You can also plug that into traditional media. So if you have a phone number on a radio station and you use a tracking number, you can plug that in. These companies have tried to sell their products to marketing agencies for several years now, and they don't want to buy them. A lot of them don't. I mean, I don't know anybody else that's using this stuff because they don't want to have to show that. That's the truth.
It's
That's
being naked. They don't want to be naked. Yeah.
right. So now what they could say is, well, it's also a partnership between the marketing company and the front desk in the office, because the front desk has to have those sales skills to be able to close that. So what we learned over the years, because I used to not listen to the calls. So I realized very quickly, you have to listen to those calls. You have to be able to understand who's coming. So we have a system, right? So with our company, with Unique Dental Marketing, we have a system. And what we do is we run your ads online or wherever they are, but most of them are online just because it produces the best ROI, we found. And we measure those campaigns. We know who called in, we know what campaign they came from, and we actually have a person, because I always say it's either a program or it's a person or some combination of the two to get your final solution. So your end-to-end solution is, here's what my marketing is, here's the people that actually came in, and here's what they produced in production. That's it. That's the whole funnel. To your point, I mean, that is the whole funnel. So but part of that is you have to be able to actually listen to those calls and provide that report. So that would be the ideal scenario.
I love that you said that, because I am an evangelist about recording. I record everything I do, and I tell my clients, look, and here's the deal. A lot of them will shy away from it, or team members will shy away from it because they worry, oh, you're just trying to catch me in something or whatever. Yeah. The fact of the matter is, I really encourage recording so you can hear yourself. Mm-hmm. I want them to go back and listen to themselves and hear where they didn't answer the question, or where they sounded scripted, or like, it's such a powerful tool. But if everybody listening to this went tomorrow, and whether you have the capability and it's just not turned on, whether you have the capability it's turned on and you're not using it, you've never listened to those recordings, or you just don't have the capability, like, get a way to record those phone calls, use processes and systems. The reason why those companies haven't been able to be sold is because it makes them naked, exposes them for what they're not doing, what actual money they're making off of these ads, and find a way to record everything you do so that you can get better at it. It's game tape, man. We were talking about football earlier, right? It's game tape. There's not a single football team, basketball team, whatever team out there, that even little league teams that don't watch the game tape, and you need to watch the game tape.
Yep. And every doctor's going to say, that's awesome. I have no time for that.
Yes.
So what I say, either have somebody in your office do that as part of what they do, which is going to be their way of objectively showing you. So you want to take emotions out of it, right? In business, you want to take emotions out of it. It's about numbers, everything to do with building your team and having a great culture. Yes, that involves emotions, but the hard numbers don't. And a lot of performance doesn't either. How many people did you close today? How many people, how many calls did you get, and how many people came in? The only two metrics that, I shouldn't say the only two, but the first two metrics that I like to look at to determine whether or not a practice is doing well or not is, what percentage of quality lead calls are you closing on the phones? Mm-hmm. And two, what percentage of dollars in treatment are accepted versus proposed? To me, it should be a third. That's healthy.
So that's what I was going to say earlier about the whole thing about the impressions and the vanity metrics. A lot of the presenting of cases. I love this when people say, well, I was able to present X amount of cases today. It's like, well, that's wonderful. How many actually gave you money? Right. And a lot of salespeople in general, like, take the practice part out of it. It's my experience over 25 years in the sales world of the salespeople will say, well, I was able to present this offer. I presented this X amount of offers. It's like, so what? Like that's a metric you're using to justify your job, exactly. But it's not anything that's increasing the business. What's that?
Yeah. So that's an excuse metric.
It's an excuse metric, yeah. So we got vanity metrics, we got excuse metrics.
Pony metric, yeah, exactly.
Awesome. We're gonna hashtag what's it called? TM.
100%.
No, it's so true. All right, so that's brilliant. So we come to a place in the show where I want to just ask you some quick rapid fire questions. I could talk to you all day long about this stuff. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this, just do yourselves a favor and recognize that I have a saying I use often that there's an evolution that's happening in practice, in practices and digital marketing, everything like that. Your practice has gone through an evolution. It will continue to go through, and it's getting faster, not slower. But the quote that I say often is either embrace being part. No, if you don't embrace being part of the evolution of your practice, you will end up being a part of its history. And you can choose to be a Netflix or a Blockbuster. It's totally up to you. I just know which one's going to win. So with that being said, make sure you reach out. So right now we are going through our, we have a rapid fire questions that we'd love to ask that just give us your quickest answer to it. I'll probably make it longer than it should be because I
Not great at brevity, but I'm buckling up here.
As you can tell, me neither. All right. So what do you see as, especially with your fresh eyes, with your perspective, what do you see as the most expensive thing that practice owners are missing in their practice?
So my tongue-in-cheek answer, but I really believe this, is some sort of business education. It doesn't have to be expensive, but I really believe in continuing to educate. I believe in lifelong learning, and I'm addicted to learning, right? That's what I personally do. That's my why. I'm addicted to the feedback loop of I learn something, I apply it, it changes my business, it changes my friendships, my relationships, my family, it changes that, and then I notice that in my life, and then I want to do more. And so it has this sort of snowball effect. So that being said, I don't think it has to be expensive, but I definitely think that having an open mind about these things, to your point, one of my mentors said something that I absolutely believe in, which is every single business right now, 2019 and beyond, he said this like in 2015, every single business right now in the world is a tech company and arguably is a marketing company. Doesn't mean you have to do that stuff in-house, but we are in an age right now where it's just different. What to your point about what got these other practices, even in the 90s and the early 2000s, what got them to where they are is not what's going to get them through to the next 5-10 years because of technology and also because of the market right now. We didn't even touch on what's happening with DSOs, but oh my God, that's a whole other thing. There's a conference that's happening in Tampa next month, actually. It's called the Private Dentist Association. And what I think is interesting about it is their mission statement is basically to arm the little guys with the stuff that the big guys have. And what's really funny about it is a lot of it is mentality stuff. A lot of it is scalability. A lot of it is looking at KPIs. A lot of it is looking at P&Ls. So, that's my short answer to that question.
We use that point a lot where we talk about how, look, do you think that these DSOs, these corporations coming in, they have CEOs, they have marketing departments, they have COOs, they have all the stuff you don't have. So you better start thinking in that same manner.
Yep. Yeah. That's why the group is called Executive Dental Group, is for that exact reason.
Exactly. That's awesome.
That's why, I mean, our partners are doctors and we're not. And again, I think that makes a lot of difference. But being a CEO is also mentality. And I think doctors are some of the best equipped, ironically, some of the best equipped people in the world to learn this stuff. It's not hard. It's just, it's just a new way of thinking.
It's one of the reasons why we created the Propreneur Mastermind for doctors to finally have a place where they can go to just talk entrepreneurial business stuff, not have a presentation on how to, do a better filling or how to do implants. It's specifically entrepreneurial stuff. Okay. So you're obviously a continual learner. So this is going to be probably a harder question, but what's a book that you feel every private practice owner should read at least once?
I love The One Thing.
The One Thing.
I love that book. Dentistry, especially for dentistry, it can be a very busy industry. Your day-to-day can be extremely hectic. And especially talking about, being a CEO, I think it's really important to know what to focus on, what not to, and the art of mindful delegation, which to me that book is all about, and I love that book. An honorable second would be The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, which has nothing to do with dentistry, but everything to do with dentistry at the same time. And it's all about how to Tim Ferriss does not work 4 hours a week, but that mentality of being able to be so optimized that you could if you wanted to. And for a lot of people, to your point, it's that 20-year window. Okay, well, maybe instead of selling your practice for $2 million in 20 years, you can sell it for $8 million. What kind of impact is that going to have for your family and your lifestyle? And what happens if you do pick up a second office because you're so optimized, or even you think about it and then you don't pick up a second office, but then you optimize the crap out of your office now and make a lot more money. And so there's a lot of implications, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of books, as you mentioned, you alluded to a few times, many of the listeners know, in my book, first book, The Practice RX, I talk about team culture and performance as really the foundation of growth in a business. So what do you find is probably some of the biggest challenges private practice owners have when it comes to their team and their office culture? I think I know your answer.
One of them is sales. You have to be sales minded. And I think the second thing should just be to have the self-awareness of yourself as a leader to understand that fit is so important. I believe in having your employees take Myers-Briggs tests. I actually think it's phenomenal. And all of those kinds of personality tests, there's another one that I'm blanking on that we started introducing recently that I like even more than Myers-Briggs. I think that's really important. What I noticed, so we work with about 140 practices as our clients across the country. We have a couple international clients as well. It's really funny because I noticed this pretty early on. It's almost like a family. I mean, it is a family. It's a small business, and you have that cult of personality thing going on where whoever's at the top, whoever the doctor is, whoever the owner-operator is, you have to find people that are like-minded. Don't try to focus your energy on bringing somebody in that's so different from you. They should have complementary skill sets. My favorite thing is, I'm paraphrasing, but, outsource your weaknesses or delegate your weaknesses. But just because somebody's better at something that you're not good at, you should still get along. You should still be able to have there should be a feeling there where you just feel good about them. And you're also aligned with your why. Some people do it for money. Some people do it for freedom. Some people do it for time, which is another way of, some people do it for all kinds of reasons. And I think that those should be aligned.
Awesome. Before we get to the last two questions, how can people reach out to you and get a hold of you?
My email is probably best. It is neil@uniquedentalmarketing.com, neil@uniquedentalmarketing.com.
Awesome. We'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well. Everybody listening, please reach out. I mean, even just to get a conversation and understand where you might be lacking or most likely are lacking in your marketing, even get a clarification of some of the KPIs you should be focused on. Obviously, you can tell that Neil, through all the information he's given us so far, is someone who wants you to succeed. And so please feel free to reach out to him. I highly recommend it. All right, Neil, in life or in business, what's the best advice you've ever received?
My mom always taught me onwards and upwards, and I love that. I love that just as a mentality. And my mom, she retired a couple of years ago, but she was a third grade teacher. She taught at Tecumseh Acres. Shout out to Tecumseh Acres in Michigan for 35 years.
Wow.
And she's the one that really, instilled the whole lifelong learning thing. I ended up, going to college and having a very traditional academic path as well, but just, realizing that never ends, and things that are super seemingly unrelated at the surface usually end up becoming pretty damn well related on the back end once you realize those patterns.
Awesome. Onward and upward. I love that. All right. So finally, what is one of the best resources or tools that you think every private practice owner should be using to grow their business?
So I really believe, speaking to the CEO thing, that you can't manage what you can't measure. I'm shocked by how many dentists that I've worked with, at least when we started, because after I'm with them for more than a couple of weeks, they don't do this anymore. But knowing how to read a P&L. I mean, knowing what your numbers are, looking at those two metrics. How well are you doing on the phones? What's your average dollar per hygiene visit? So my answer to that question is get a tool that shows you that. I like Dental Intel. There's another one that I like, Treatment 24/7. No affiliation with either. I love them. Something like that shows you what your numbers are, so that you can digest that on a very regular basis.
Well, here's the point of that too, is that just as we were talking about earlier about evolution, you don't have to figure it out yourself. The tools are out there for you to use, right? Like you need to, it's so crucial. And this isn't something that you want to do when you need it. Like, right, oh, I'm going to sell my practice. I should probably figure out what my numbers are and what the value of my practice is. No, do that now and track it all the way through. And the tools are there. You mentioned Dental Intel, like they're all of those are out there. So that's
trainings and all this kind of stuff. And like, to your point as well, even doctors in the same market, in my view, ultimately are not really competing with each other.
No.
Certainly not dentists across the country. And what I find too, I mean, joining a group like Dental Nachos or Dental Peeps or, these kinds of things, and even with us, right? Like the thing that I'm not a salesperson for our own business. Again, we started our business selfishly for our own practices. And then now we've grown to about 140 practices in about 4 years organically. One of the reasons I'm excited to be on is we're now finally starting to like market ourselves.
Ah, nice.
But that being said, a lot of what we do is just very conversational, and I really do enjoy just looking at what doctors are doing, what practices are doing, whether we're a good fit or not. I mean, there's a lot of practices that I think are doing the right kinds of things. They just either are doing it in a ratio that I don't think is right, or this and that. And the other thing too is, I say this all the time, but being a data-driven person and running a data-driven company like that, I'm always wrong. like I'm wrong all the time, even with, and I'd put myself up against anybody that runs Google ads or Facebook ads or anything like that. I think we have the best team, and we are always wrong. And I love that, because first of all, we're willing to admit that. Two, when you're wrong enough times, you become so right. You know what I mean? And so with new campaigns that we launch, this kind of thing, like when we launch a new campaign, like, yes, pretty much out of the gate at this point, it's very honed in late October of 2019 to where it's going to do very well out of the gate. But the crazy thing is that the ads that didn't even exist 6 months ago, you want to talk about changing strategy.
Sure.
The Google My Business ads, for example, that we run now that probably bring in the most production dollars weren't even around 8 months ago. That is what people really need to understand. That is what I really hope that doctors understand about this, listening to this, is that this is real. Like, this is what's happening. Billboards, mailers, these kinds of things, even the data, though, that you can input into those marketing channels is going to go a long way. And, Nielsen data and the other demographic like inputs where these channels are getting their data from. I mean, you're getting census data. What is it, updated once every 10 years, and two, like, I will tell you, as a citizen, I mean, I don't like Google. I don't. I think it's I get pegged as the digital marketing guy dude all the time. I think it's creepy, the stuff that I have access to.
Sure, right.
As a business owner, I love it. But
right.
It's like, we'll use it and we use the crap out of it. But like, I know what people are looking at. I know all kinds of demographic information. I know we can do geofencing and determine like household income of the specific house. I know what you bought on Amazon to a certain extent. I know what you're buying online. I know all these kinds of things, and it's real creepy. But at the same time, it is being used. First of all of the largest organizations are using it, including the largest DSOs.
Yep.
And I think, there's a whole ethics thing that we could get into, but that's a question that I wrestle with honestly internally a lot. Is like, where is this going? So that's a whole other episode. But
absolutely,
but the point is that I think that practices should be working with, and this is why, again, going back to my probably biggest takeaway is the big box guys I think there's a couple decent ones, but if you can find a really solid local person that understands how to run Google ads first and then Facebook ads second, I think that's your best bet. And they should be leveraging all of these crazy technologies because they can in fact be used to make you a lot of money. And if they can listen to your calls, that's what they should be doing.
Yeah.
And actually put a sheet together of John Smith called in. There's a way to hook it up. You can use a tool called CallRail that will link to Google Ads, and you can actually track where they came in from, what channel they came in from, have somebody listen to that call, and you can determine did that person book or not, why did they or they didn't they, which goes into coaching, and then you can determine the production dollars per campaign, and now you have your full, complete feedback loop.
And
we're going on all kinds of tangents today. I am at least, but
so it's great. It's great. I hope you know what? I'm looking forward to hearing the person who pulled over just to take notes, right? Because you just gave them a full circle of what to look for, and also the value of being able to say, when you talk to your local digital marketer, these are the questions you need to be asking. These are the focuses that you need to have in those conversations. So I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Thank you so much for such an amazing episode of great value. You know, our goal here at Propreneur is to really help people have the best practices possible and to learn it. And we didn't get to meet beforehand other than very briefly. And I love it when I connect with somebody, both this podcast I recorded earlier. It's like, okay, I love hearing people that are on the same page with me, because sometimes I feel like I'm in a vacuum and just like yelling at myself going, am I alone? Am I crazy here? But I love it. I am crazy, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, this is great. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this, Neil, and sharing with us. Please, everybody, reach out to Neil. And when you do, say what I'm going to say to sign off here, but onward and upward. Thanks so much again for listening to the Propreneur Podcast. We really appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed already, please make sure you do so. Also, if you feel like you might be a good fit for our podcast as a guest, or know somebody who you think would be, go ahead and email us at dino@dinowatt.com. Again, thanks for your support. We'll see you on the next episode.